Jake Morrison stood at the observation window on Luna Station, staring into the void of space, where 300 ships floated aimlessly. He had seen a lot in his 15 years with the Earth Defense Force, but he'd never witnessed something like this. The ships weren't military. They were refugees. 3 entire species, the Vidians, Kelhari, and Zephyrites, had been cast out from the heart of the galaxy. The Galactic Council had deemed them unwanted, exiling them for reasons that seemed trivial and political. The Vidians, made of living crystal, could interface directly with machines and process information at speeds unimaginable to any computer. The Kelhari, aquatic beings, had biotechnology that could cure diseases humans had been fighting for centuries. The Zephyrites, with their insect-like exteriors, had the ability to terraform barren worlds into lush gardens. But none of that mattered to the Council. Jake wasn't sure how it had happened, but the refugees had made it to human space. They had nowhere else to go. Luna Station was humanity's outpost, and yet here they were, stranded at the far edge of the solar system. The refugees weren't just a burden. They were a crisis. They were symbols of the Council's indifference. Behind him, Admiral Lisa Carter stepped into the observation deck. Her face was drawn, weary from days of meetings and the endless political discourse on what to do about the refugees. "Any word from Earth?" Jake asked without turning around. He could feel the tension in the air. The fate of these 3 species, and perhaps humanity's place in the galaxy, hung in the balance. Lisa sighed, walking toward the terminal where the most recent transmission from Earth was displayed. "They're divided. Some want to offer sanctuary. Others—" "Well, they're worried about the Council's reaction. We've only been a member for 97 years. If we help these species, the Council will see it as a betrayal." Jake's gaze hardened as he watched the ships, their dim lights flickering like distant stars. "And if we don't help them?" Lisa didn't answer immediately. She understood. Jake's instincts were sharp. Humanity's future was not just about diplomacy or trade routes. It was about standing up for what was right. Jake had seen how easily the Council dismissed entire civilizations, disregarding lives for the sake of political convenience. Lisa finally spoke, her voice low. "If we don't, we condemn them to die in the cold of space, and the galaxy will know we're not the kind of people who will stand up for the weak, the kind who turn our backs on others for fear of our own survival." Jake knew this wasn't just about refugees. It was about humanity's soul. They had a choice to make, whether to risk their standing in the galaxy to do what was right, or to bend to the will of an ancient and powerful council. "Tell Earth to prepare for a decision," Jake said, his voice firm, "because I'm not leaving them out there to die." As he said it, the doors to the observation deck slid open, and Dr. Alan Rodriguez, the Earth government's chief xenobiologist, stepped in. His face was pale, a report clutched in his hand. "Captain," he said urgently, "I've completed the analysis of the refugees. We cannot just offer them sanctuary. These species, they bring something extraordinary to the table. The Vidians, their technology could advance our computers 1,000-fold. The Kelhari, their biotechnology could revolutionize medicine. And the Zephyrites, their agricultural techniques could end world hunger on Earth in a decade." Jake turned to Lisa. "The Council doesn't see this. They see only what they fear. We could build a future together if we stand up now." Lisa's eyes flickered with uncertainty, but she nodded. "But we'll be alone in this. The Council will turn on us. Earth's government is divided, and we don't have the military strength to defy the Council." Dr. Rodriguez's voice was quiet but resolute. "But we have something the Council doesn't, the will to do what's right. We can make this work. We just need to convince Earth to act before it's too late." Jake clenched his jaw, his mind already racing with possibilities. "We'll make them see. I'll send a message to Admiral Carter. Tell her to prepare for action. We're taking a stand." Before he could finish speaking, the terminal beeped, announcing an incoming transmission. The message from Earth had arrived. Jake's heart pounded in his chest as he pressed a button to accept the transmission. On the screen appeared President Patricia Hayes, her face a picture of determination, but with an edge of uncertainty. "Captain Morrison," she began, "I've read Dr. Rodriguez's report. I've consulted with my advisors, and we have reached a decision. Earth will stand by the refugees." Jake let out a breath he didn't realize he was holding, but his relief was short-lived. President Hayes continued, her voice heavy with the weight of what she was about to say. "However, we are not blind to the consequences. The Galactic Council will react. We're facing severe trade sanctions, and if they decide to use military force, we could be facing war. We'll need your help to prepare the fleet. Are you ready for this?" Jake's eyes narrowed as he stared at the screen. There was no turning back now. "We're ready, Madam President. I'll do whatever it takes to protect them." "Good," she replied. "Then prepare yourself. This fight isn't just about protecting refugees. It's about standing up to the Council and showing the galaxy that humanity is ready to do more than just survive." The transmission cut out, leaving the room heavy with the decision that had just been made. The stakes had been set. Jake knew the road ahead would be difficult and the consequences would be immense. But there was no turning back now. Humanity had chosen its path, and he was ready to lead them into the unknown. As Jake turned to the view of the refugee ships, a new alarm blared throughout Luna Station, the emergency lights flashing red. A new transmission came through, this time from the Galactic Council. The message was short and chilling. "Surrender the refugees, or face the consequences." The red lights flickered across Luna Station as the new transmission blared through the command center. Jake's heart pounded in his chest. This wasn't just a warning anymore. The Galactic Council had made their move. The message, delivered in calm but unmistakably threatening tones, repeated its demand. "Surrender the refugees, or face the consequences." Jake clenched his fists, turning toward the console where Admiral Lisa Carter was already reading the transmission in silence. Her expression was unreadable. She had known this was coming, just as Jake had, but hearing the words spoken aloud made it all too real. "How much time do we have?" Jake asked, his voice steady despite the rising tension. "Not much," Lisa replied, her fingers flying over the terminal as she pulled up the Council's fleet movements. "The fleet is already moving toward the outer rim. It's a show of force. Their hopping will cave under pressure." Jake glanced at the holographic map in front of him. It was an impressive display of military power, hundreds of warships, large and imposing, moving in synchronized formation. The Council was flexing its muscles, showing the galaxy that their dominance would not be questioned. He stared hard at the ships, the cold reality setting in. Humanity wasn't prepared for this kind of fight. Even with the new technologies they had gained from the refugees, they were still outnumbered and outgunned. But Jake had never backed down from a challenge, not once in his career. "We won't surrender," Jake said, his voice resolute. "We'll do what we have to do." Lisa nodded, but her face was etched with worry. "We have to prepare the fleet. We don't have the luxury of time. If we're going to fight, we need to know exactly how we're going to do it." Dr. Alan Rodriguez, standing nearby, looked over the map, his brow furrowed. "We need to leverage everything we've learned from the refugees. The Vidians have given us crystal computing systems that are faster than anything we've ever built. The Kelhari's biotechnology could be the key to reinforcing our military hardware. And the Zephyrites, their terraforming methods could give us an edge in defensive strategies." "We're going to need more than that," Lisa muttered. "The Council has entire fleets at their disposal. If they push us into a fight, it's going to get ugly fast." Jake knew she was right, but there was something else at play here, something that made his resolve steel even further. The refugees were no longer just aliens in need of help. They had become a symbol of everything the Galactic Council feared. They were living proof that cooperation and diversity could lead to breakthroughs the Council didn't want to see. As much as Jake knew the Council would retaliate, he also knew this was humanity's chance to prove that it was different. They weren't going to bow to fear. They were going to show the galaxy that there was more to life than control and conformity. "Get me a direct line to President Hayes," Jake ordered, his voice firm. Hours later, the command center on Luna Station was buzzing with activity. Crew members scrambled to prepare the fleet, working in perfect sync to implement the newly devised strategy. Jake paced the room, coordinating with his officers, making sure everything was in place for the coming confrontation. Lisa approached him with a grim expression. "The fleet is ready, but I'm still not sure about the political fallout. If the Council decides to cut off trade routes and block any future communication with us, we'll be isolated. Earth won't survive long on its own." "We're not thinking about survival," Jake said. "We're thinking about what's right." Before Lisa could respond, the terminal beeped, signaling an incoming transmission. It was from President Hayes herself. The gravity of the situation hung in the air as the hologram of the president flickered into view. "Captain Morrison," she said, her face serious but filled with the determination that had earned her the presidency. "I know what's at stake. You're about to lead humanity into a battle the likes of which we've never seen. You've made your choice, and I respect that. Earth will stand with you." Jake's heart gave a slight lurch at her words. Earth was standing with them. Now all they had to do was make sure the rest of the galaxy knew it. "We'll be ready, Madam President," Jake said, swallowing hard. "Just give the word." The president's eyes flickered with uncertainty, but she was resolute. "You've already given the word. It's up to you now. Earth has taken a stand, and we won't back down. Prepare for the consequences." As the transmission ended, Jake turned back to his officers, his mind racing. The consequences were coming, and they would be immediate, but there was no turning back. Jake placed his hand on the console, looking at the map of their enemies. His eyes hardened. "We don't know exactly when they'll strike, but we need to be ready for anything," Jake said, his voice cutting through the room. "Tell the fleet to power up, prepare for a blockade or worse, an invasion. Earth's future is in our hands, and we won't let them take that away from us." Just as Jake finished issuing the final orders, the station's alarms blared again. Another transmission came in, this time from the Galactic Council itself. But this message wasn't a demand. It was a warning. "Your defiance has consequences, Captain Morrison. We are preparing for a full-scale operation. You have 72 hours. After that, we will consider you an enemy of the galaxy." The warning from the Galactic Council echoed in Jake's mind long after the transmission had ended. "You have 72 hours. After that, we will consider you an enemy of the galaxy." The words hung in the air like a dark cloud waiting to burst. The message was clear. They were running out of time. Jake paced the command center, the usual hum of Luna Station now filled with an uneasy energy. His crew was readying the fleet, but the threat was enormous. The Council wasn't just playing politics anymore. They were preparing for all-out war. Jake could feel the weight of that reality pressing down on him. The stakes were higher than ever. "How are we looking on defensive systems?" Jake asked, his voice calm despite the pressure mounting on him. Lisa stood by the terminal, eyes scanning the status reports. "We've integrated Vidian crystal technology into our defense grid, but it's still untested in real combat. The Kelhari bioships are adapting quickly, but we don't know how well they'll perform under fire. And the Zephyrite organisms, they've got potential, but they're still being refined." Jake's jaw clenched. The fact that they were working with untested technologies was both an advantage and a risk. They had no choice but to press forward. If they could integrate these breakthroughs into their strategy, they might stand a chance. "Do what you can to optimize them," Jake ordered. "And get the Zephyrites working on that biological defense grid we discussed. I want to be prepared for a full assault, no matter what happens." Lisa nodded, her mind already racing with the possibilities. "We're all in, Captain, but we need to be realistic about our numbers. If the Council comes with everything they have, we'll be outgunned. They have the resources to overwhelm us. We have to make every second count." Hours passed in a blur of activity. Jake barely had time to think before the next wave of messages arrived. The Council had mobilized. Their fleet was making its way toward the outer rim, and they had already begun issuing demands to nearby species. They weren't just targeting Earth anymore. They were sending a message to the galaxy. Anyone who defied their rule would face the consequences. Jake stood in the middle of the command center, watching the display as Council ships continued their advance. It was a terrifying sight. The fleet was massive, made up of ships that could easily wipe out entire planets. The sheer force of their military might seem insurmountable. "How long do we have?" Jake asked again, his voice grim. His eyes never left the screen as it showed the Council fleet coming closer. Lisa checked the clock. "Not much. They'll reach the outer colonies in less than 48 hours, and after that they'll be in striking range of Luna Station." Jake's stomach churned. The countdown had begun. They were in the final stretch. The galaxy had been on the brink of war for too long, and now it seemed inevitable. But Jake wasn't just fighting for Earth. He was fighting for something more, for the values they had been taught, for the idea that no one should be cast aside simply because they were different. Jake turned to Dr. Alan Rodriguez, who had been working tirelessly to understand the refugee technologies. "Alan, do you think these breakthroughs can really give us the edge we need? We're talking about unproven technology, if they don't work." "They'll work," Alan interrupted, his voice firm. "We just need to believe in it. We're working with the most advanced species in the galaxy. The Vidian's crystal technology can enhance our computational abilities beyond anything we've ever imagined. The Kelhari's biotechnology can repair our ships on the fly. And the Zephrites, their terraforming techniques can be used as a form of biological defense, creating barriers to slow down or even repel enemy ships. It's going to be different from anything the Council has ever seen. If we can pull this off, we won't just survive. We'll come out of this stronger. Jake nodded, trying to absorb the gravity of the situation. If Alan was right, they were about to enter into a battle with weapons the galaxy had never seen. But the question remained, would it be enough? Just then, a flash of light filled the command center, followed by a loud beeping from the console. Jake turned to see the alert coming through. It was from the Zephyrite colonies on Mars. "Captain, we've completed the initial phase of the biodefensive grid," a voice crackled through the comms. "It's not perfect, but it's working. We've started deploying organisms into strategic areas around the outer colonies. The creatures can generate energy fields that interfere with enemy weapons and sensors. The first trial was a success." Jake's heart skipped a beat. That was exactly the kind of breakthrough they needed. The Zephrites, organisms, could create a living shield around their colonies, a shield that could protect them from the incoming threat. It was a glimmer of hope, but it wasn't enough to rest on. They had a long way to go before the Council's fleet arrived. "We'll need more," Jake said, his mind already planning the next steps. "Deploy the organisms along the outer rim where they'll have the most impact, and start preparing the biofighters. We can't afford to be caught off guard." As the hours stretched into the night, the reality of what was coming became more and more tangible. The Earth fleet was preparing for battle, and Jake had to make decisions that would affect the lives of billions. He could feel the weight of the galaxy bearing down on his shoulders. "We've got one shot at this," Jake said to his team. "We hold our ground no matter what. We stand for the refugees, we stand for Earth. We fight together or we fall apart. Let's show the galaxy what humanity is made of." Just as Jake turned back to the terminal, an emergency message flashed on the screen. This one was from the Council. "This is your final warning, Captain Morrison. Your defiance has already been noted. We are moving forward with full military action. Prepare for your extinction." The message ended with a cold finality. Jake clenched his fists. The time was almost up. He turned to Lisa, whose face was pale but determined. "Prepare the fleet," Jake said, his voice unwavering. "We fight." As Jake made his way toward the command room, the emergency lights on Luna Station began to flash again. A massive wave of incoming ships appeared on the radar, but this time they weren't Council warships. They were ships from multiple species, and they were heading straight for Earth. The galaxy was watching, and they were ready to choose sides. The alarms blared across Luna Station, the flashing red lights throwing everything into sharp relief. Jake stood frozen for a moment, staring at the radar as the new ships appeared on the screen. They weren't from the Galactic Council. They were alien vessels, dozens of them, all coming from different directions. The strange ships moved as one, heading straight for Earth's defenses. "Where did they come from?" Lisa asked, her voice sharp as she scanned the data. Jake's eyes widened. He could barely believe what he was seeing. The ships weren't Council vessels. They were too diverse, some sleek and crystalline, others organic, resembling the ships of the refugees. He recognized the designs immediately. There were Vidians, Kelhari, and Zephrites among them. But there were more species than that, unfamiliar ships, all converging on the human fleet on Earth itself. "Earth's allies," Jake murmured, his heart racing. "They've come to our aid." Lisa's face softened in disbelief. "We never expected this. The Council. They're going to lose everything. This is their worst nightmare." Jake nodded. The refugees, the outcasts of the galaxy, had found their strength in unity. They were joining forces with humanity, and the stakes had just become higher than ever. The message that accompanied the incoming fleet was brief, but packed with significance. "We do not forget those who stand with us. The galaxy's power has shifted. We fight together or we fall together. We are the Refugee Alliance." Jake's breath caught in his chest. The galaxy was changing. The tide was turning, but that didn't mean they were out of danger. It meant the Council was about to escalate the situation even further. If they didn't win this fight, there would be no turning back. "We've got to move fast," Jake said, turning to Lisa. "We can't let the Council get a foothold in our system. Once they realize what's happening, they'll send everything they have." Lisa nodded, her face grim but resolute. The refugees have united, but their forces are still small. If we're going to pull this off, we need to focus on their weaknesses. We can't afford to be overwhelmed by their numbers. Jake's mind was racing. They had a small window to coordinate their forces before the council adapted. The next 48 hours would decide everything. He turned back to the terminal and began issuing orders to his fleet. As the new coalition of forces began to organize, Jake couldn't shake the feeling that time was running out. He felt like they were standing on the precipice of something monumental. The fate of the galaxy was now in their hands. But even with the new reinforcements, the Council was a force to be reckoned with. Their fleet was massive, and their strength lay not just in their numbers, but in their unrelenting control of galactic politics. "Captain," Dr. Rodriguez said, stepping into the command center with a report. "I've been going through the data from the refugees. The Vidian's crystal technology can enhance our weapons, but we need a more coordinated offensive. The Kelhari's bioships are powerful, but they need precise targeting, and the Zephyrite's organisms. They need to be strategically deployed to form a shield." Jake rubbed his temples, the weight of the decision pressing down on him. "We need to strike first. They're already on the move, but we can't just rely on the tech. We need to hit them where it hurts." Rodriguez nodded, clearly on the same page. "We'll need to take out their command ships. If we can break their communications, we disrupt their whole fleet." Jake's eyes hardened. "Then that's what we do, no second chances. We have one shot at this." The next few hours were a blur of planning and preparation. The newly arrived fleet, though inexperienced in coordinated battle, was fiercely determined. Species that had been cast aside by the Galactic Council were now uniting under the banner of the Refugee Alliance, fighting not only for survival, but for the right to exist. Jake stood at the command center looking over the final battle plans. His crew was ready. The alien fleet, while not as numerous as the Council's, had an advantage: unity and ingenuity. The combined forces of humanity, the Vidians, Kelhari, and Zephrites, had developed a strategy that might just work. But Jake knew it was still a gamble. If they lost, everything they had fought for would be lost. The Council would wipe them out, and no one would dare defy their rule again. The battle began with a deafening roar of engines as the combined fleet surged toward the approaching Council warships. Jake's heart raced as he watched the ships, human, Vidian, Kelhari, and Zephrite, moving in unison. The sky above Luna Station seemed to crackle with energy as the two fleets collided. On the bridge of the S-Defiance, Jake commanded the charge. "All units, engage, focus on their command ships, take down their communications, and keep pushing forward." Lisa's voice was sharp in his ear. "The Council's fleet is massive, but they're disorganized. Our bioships are adapting faster than they expected. We're holding them off." Jake watched as the biofighters, grown from Kelhari biotechnology, darted through the battle with swift precision. The Zephrite organisms formed living shields around key human positions, deflecting enemy fire and protecting their fleet from the worst of the Council's attacks. Meanwhile, the Vidians' crystal technology was pushing their systems to new heights, enhancing weapons fire with lightning speed. The battle was far from won, but for the first time, Jake felt a glimmer of hope. But the tide wasn't turning just yet. A new, more dangerous threat emerged from the Council's forces. A massive ship, unlike any they had encountered before, appeared from the darkness of space. Its size was monstrous, a black, sleek behemoth that seemed to warp space around it. "It's a flagship," Lisa said, her voice strained. "They've deployed their command vessel. We need to take that down or we're done for." Jake's eyes locked onto the ship. It was a weapon of war designed to crush any opposition, and it was heading straight for the heart of the human fleet. "We're going to have to hit it with everything we've got," Jake said, his voice calm but filled with resolve. "Prepare all units for an all-out assault. We take that ship or we lose everything." The ships of the Refugee Alliance regrouped, gathering their forces for one final push. The next few minutes would decide the fate of the galaxy. As the Refugee Alliance's fleet prepared to attack the Council's flagship, a strange distortion appeared on the radar. A new wave of enemy ships, far more than they had anticipated, began to emerge from hyperspace, surrounding them on all sides. The Council's reinforcements had arrived. And this time, they weren't just after the refugees. They were coming for Earth itself. Jake's heart pounded as the new wave of enemy ships appeared on the radar. This wasn't a handful of reinforcements. It was a full-scale military force, far larger than anything the Refugee Alliance had prepared for. The Council's forces had come in full force, a dark storm of warships and fighters flooding the space around Luna Station. "Status," Jake barked, his voice commanding. Lisa's fingers flew over the control panel, her eyes wide with disbelief. "The reinforcements have arrived. I've never seen anything like it. They've deployed over 300 additional ships, more than double what we've been expecting." Jake's mind raced. The battle had already been one of the most intense he'd ever been a part of, but now it seemed like all hope was slipping away. He turned to the view screen and saw the vast fleet of Council warships closing in from every direction. They moved with brutal efficiency, their massive, dark silhouettes blotting out the stars behind them. The flagship, a sleek black warship of unimaginable size, was at the heart of the formation. It loomed like a predator, commanding the entire fleet. "We need to take that flagship down," Jake said, his voice steady despite the overwhelming odds. "It's the key to breaking their command structure. Without it, their forces will falter." "Captain, we've already lost over a dozen of our smaller ships," Lisa said. "Their firepower is immense. We can't keep up at this rate. If we try to engage them directly, we'll be wiped out." Jake's fists clenched. He wasn't ready to give up yet, not when so many were depending on him. He turned to the terminal where Dr. Rodriguez was monitoring the status of the biodefensive organisms. The creatures were doing their best to slow the enemy's advance, but they were no match for the Council's firepower. "We need a new strategy," Jake said, his eyes scanning the displays. "We can't just meet them head-on, we have to outsmart them. Get me a direct line to our allies." A few minutes later, Jake stood in front of a secure terminal, watching as the alien leaders appeared on the screen. There was no time for pleasantries. This was war. "Everyone's in position?" Jake asked. His voice was filled with urgency. The Vidian leader, Keth, was the first to speak. His crystal body shimmered as he interfaced with the communications network. "We are ready, Captain Morrison. Our ships are aligned. The crystal technology is fully operational." The Kelhari representative, Synth, appeared next. "Our bioships are growing stronger with every moment. We've adapted to their weapons, but we will need more time to finish fully deploying the defensive grids." Jake nodded, but there was no time to waste. "Time isn't something we have. We need to do this now. Here's the plan. The flagship is too heavily fortified to go after directly with conventional weapons, but its weakness is in its communications. We take down their systems and the entire fleet will be crippled. It's not perfect, but it's our best shot." Synth's water-based form rippled with recognition. "We can help with that. The Kelhari bioships can infiltrate the flagship systems. Our biofighters have already been adapted to work with your weapons. We'll use their own systems against them." Keth, the Vidian leader, nodded. "The Vidians will synchronize with the bioships. Our crystal technology can enhance their ability to infiltrate enemy communications. We will connect our ships with the biofighters and synchronize their power output." Jake turned to the Zephyrite leader, Queen Voice. "And you?" Queen Voice clicked her mandibles in response, her 6 arms moving with grace. "The Zephyrites will create a living barrier. We will form a defensive line, not just to block the Council's attacks, but to protect our forces as they make their move. Our organisms will work in concert with your fighters." Jake's plan was coming together, but it wasn't just about strategy anymore. It was about everything they had fought for. This was humanity's moment. They were no longer just defending their right to exist. They were proving that working together, despite all their differences, was the key to survival. And they would do whatever it took to stand against the Council. The final battle was about to begin. Jake stood on the bridge of the Defiance, the flagship of humanity's forces. The combined fleet of Earth and the Refugee Alliance gathered around him. Ships of every shape and size, alien bioships, human warships, Vidian crystal ships, ready to face the Council in a desperate last stand. "Captain, we're receiving a transmission from the Council," Lisa said, her voice steady despite the tension. Jake gritted his teeth. "Put it through." The screen flickered and the image of a Council representative appeared. It was an imposing figure, tall, with smooth, dark skin and an aura of authority. "This is your final chance, Captain Morrison. Surrender the refugees or face total annihilation." Jake stood tall. "We've already made our decision. You're the ones who have underestimated humanity. This ends today." The representative's eyes narrowed, but there was no time for further words. The transmission cut off, and Jake watched as the massive Council fleet advanced, their weapons charging up for the final assault. Deploy the bioships, Jake ordered. The battlefield erupted as ships and fighters moved into position. The Vidians activated their crystal technology, sending pulses of energy that synchronized with the biofighters. The Kelhari's bioships darted through space like living missiles, weaving through enemy lines to infiltrate the Council flagship systems. The Zephyrites released their organisms, which formed a living shield around the Allied forces. Jake gripped the console tightly as his crew fired the first shots. Their weapons, enhanced by the Vidian crystals, tore through enemy lines with precision. But the Council's response was immediate. Their massive warships fired massive energy beams that cut through the darkness of space, aiming to destroy everything in their path. "Steady," Jake said, his voice calm despite the chaos around him. "We've trained for this. Now let's show them what we can do." The bioships continued their relentless assault, infiltrating the Council's flagship. The living organisms surrounding the battle began to interfere with enemy weapons, slowing their advance. The Council's warships tried to break through, but their firepower was now useless against the combined efforts of the Refugee Alliance. Hours passed in a brutal back-and-forth, with every ship engaged in a fight for survival. Jake watched as his forces began to break through the enemy lines. They weren't just fighting for their survival anymore. They were fighting for the future of the galaxy. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, a message came through from the bioships. "Flagship systems compromised, communications down, their forces are in disarray." Jake's heart leaped. They had done it. But the battle wasn't over yet. The Council was reeling, but they weren't finished, and Jake knew that their final push was just beginning. Just as Jake allowed himself a moment of relief, the tactical display blinked with a new alert. The Council's flagship had exploded in a massive fireball, but from the wreckage, a new threat emerged. A black hole artificially created began to form in the center of the battlefield, an unexpected weapon and one that could swallow everything. "Brace for impact," Jake shouted. "Everyone pull back." The Refugee Alliance's fleet was caught in the gravitational pull of the artificial black hole. There was no escape. The artificial black hole loomed in the center of the battlefield like a hungry maw, its gravitational pull growing stronger by the second. The sky above Luna Station, once filled with the stars of distant systems, was now darkened by the swirling vortex, consuming everything in its path. Jake's pulse quickened as the display on the tactical screen flashed red. "Captain, we need to move," Lisa said urgently, her eyes locked on the swirling mass of dark energy. "If we don't pull back now, we'll be dragged in. All ships retreat to a safe distance." Jake didn't need to hear it twice. "Get the fleet moving now," he barked, his voice sharper than ever. "We can't outrun it, but we can at least keep our ships from being swallowed whole." The engines of the Defiance roared to life as the ship veered away from the gravitational pull, but it was clear that they wouldn't make it far enough in time. The artificial black hole wasn't just drawing them in, it was also disrupting their systems. The communications grid was going haywire, and the life support systems flickered with every passing moment. "Deploy the Zephyrite organisms," Jake ordered. "They can form a barrier, slow the pull, anything we can do to buy more time." "Already on it, Captain," came Queen Voice's voice over the comms, calm despite the chaos. "Our organisms are expanding around the black hole's event horizon. They will try to contain its reach, but we cannot hold it for long." Jake clenched his teeth. There was no easy way out of this. The black hole wasn't just a weapon, it was an insidious force that could destroy everything in its path, and right now it was working against them. He glanced at the tactical map, eyes scanning the rapidly shrinking window of safety. "We need to destroy it," Jake said, his voice filled with determination. "We can't just run, we need to stop that thing before it consumes the entire fleet." On the bridge of the Defiance, the crew worked in a frenzy, trying to reroute power and keep the ship in motion. The gravitational pull of the black hole was relentless, its force stronger with every passing second. "Captain, we can't fight the black hole directly," Lisa said, her voice strained with tension. "Our weapons, none of them are strong enough to destroy something like this." Jake's mind raced. The Council had been ruthless, but they were also cunning. The appearance of the black hole hadn't been an accident. It was a weapon designed not just to destroy, but to force humanity and the refugees into a position of helplessness. He thought about the Vidians, their crystal technology, and the Kelhari's bioships. He thought about the last time the refugees had offered something humanity hadn't expected. This time, the solution might be hidden in the unexpected as well. Dr. Rodriguez, Jake called, turning to the scientist who had been studying the refugee technologies. What if we used the crystal technology to disrupt the black hole's core? We know the Vidians can interface with the very fabric of spacetime. Could they? Captain, I understand your thought process, but Alan Rodriguez began, rubbing his tired eyes. The black hole is an unstable anomaly. We don't have the technology to control or interfere with it safely. It's not just gravity, it's a distortion of spacetime itself. If we try to disrupt it with the Vidian crystals, we risk making it worse. It could tear apart the fabric of space entirely. Jake's stomach dropped. There had to be another way. He stared at the black hole growing larger on the tactical display, swallowing everything in its path. Ships were being pulled toward it, their engines struggling to break free as they were dragged closer to the event horizon. The comms crackled with the voice of Queen Voice, the Zephyrite leader. Captain, our organisms are slowing the black hole's growth, but it is still expanding. We can't stop it, only delay it. Jake's mind spun, trying to find a solution. They were running out of time, and there was no time to waste on hesitation. Suddenly, something clicked in his mind. The refugees had spent centuries evolving and adapting in ways the Council couldn't comprehend. What if they could use their collective knowledge to rewrite the rules? Jake slammed his fist on the console. What if we use their weaknesses against them? He muttered, more to himself than anyone else. Captain, Lisa asked, stepping closer. What do you mean? Jake turned, his face lighting up with sudden understanding. The black hole is a disturbance in spacetime, right? But the Council uses power, their military might, their dominance, as their weapon. What if we combine the biotechnology and crystal technology? What if we could turn this anomaly into something that can work for us, something that shifts the tide of battle? He looked at Alan Rodriguez. Dr. Rodriguez, we need a direct connection between the Vidian crystal tech and the Kelhari bioships. If we can interface their systems together, we might be able to create an energy feedback loop strong enough to reverse the black hole's effects. Alan hesitated, then nodded. It's a long shot, but if the bioships can grow their own power through the crystalline energy, we may be able to generate a counterforce that disrupts the black hole. Then let's do it, Jake said, turning back to Lisa. Tell the fleet to push back. We need to clear the path for the bioships to reach the event horizon and interface with the crystal power. The fleet maneuvered with urgency, clearing a path through the chaos of war. Jake's heart raced as he watched the bioships, powered by Kelhari biotechnology and Vidian crystals, begin their approach toward the black hole. The tension on the bridge was palpable. Every second felt like an eternity as they moved closer to the heart of the anomaly. The black hole's gravity was warping the space around it, distorting the ship's communications and systems. But Jake wasn't about to let it stop them. The bioships would have to make it through the distortion, reaching the epicenter of the black hole in time to create the counterforce that could save them all. The comms buzzed. We're in position, Queen Voice's voice came through, tense but resolute. We are beginning the interface. Jake's breath hitched as he watched the black hole grow, the pull becoming stronger by the second. But then something strange began to happen. The black hole's core seemed to ripple, as if it were responding to the energy being fed into it. The ships around Luna Station continued to fight, but Jake could sense something shifting. Hold on, Jake shouted, his hands gripping the console as the tension built to a breaking point. This is it. The feedback loop activated, the fusion of Vidian and Kelhari technology creating an explosion of energy. The black hole flickered, its edge beginning to shrink, its pull weakening as the bioship's power surged. And then, with a suddenness that sent shockwaves through space, the black hole collapsed in on itself, imploding with a burst of energy that sent ripples through the galaxy. The danger was over. The gravitational distortion vanished, and the skis over Luna Station cleared. Jake looked at the tactical display, disbelief and relief flooding him at once. As the black hole collapsed, the remnants of the Council's fleet faltered. But Jake's victory was short-lived. A new signal flashed across the screen, an encrypted message from the Galactic Council, but this one wasn't a threat. This is not over, Captain Morrison. You may have won this battle, but we will not forget what you have done. The galaxy will see what happens when you defy us. The war is far from over. The battle was over. The black hole had collapsed in on itself, its pull weakening until it vanished entirely, leaving behind a void in the fabric of space. Jake stared at the view outside Luna Station's command deck, the stars now visible once more. But despite the victory, the silence felt hollow. The Galactic Council's words still echoed in his mind. "This is not over, Captain Morrison. You may have won this battle, but we will not forget what you have done. The galaxy will see what happens when you defy us. The war is far from over." Jake's grip tightened on the railing. The war wasn't over, not by a long shot. The victory they'd just achieved, crippling the Council's black hole weapon and repelling their fleet, was monumental, but the Council's power was vast, and their anger would not be easily quenched. The galaxy had just witnessed humanity and the Refugee Alliance standing together, but the Council would seek retribution. And Jake knew that retribution would come faster than they could prepare for it. "Captain," Lisa's voice broke through his thoughts. "The fleet is holding, but we can't afford to relax. The Council will regroup. They'll come for us again. We need to make sure Earth is prepared for what's next." Jake turned to her, his face hardening. "I know, but we just bought ourselves some time. Now we need to use it. We have to show the galaxy that we're not just standing by. We're leading a new way forward." Lisa nodded, but there was concern in her eyes. "And what if the galaxy doesn't follow? What if they turn their backs on us like the Council did to the refugees? What if the rest of the galaxy isn't ready for this kind of change?" Jake's jaw clenched. He couldn't deny the doubt that lingered in his own mind. But he knew one thing for sure: humanity had never been afraid of a fight. And now, with the Refugee Alliance at their side, they had the strength to fight for something bigger than themselves. "We have to believe," Jake said, his voice quiet but filled with determination. "We have to show them that cooperation isn't a weakness, it's the future, and we'll do whatever it takes to protect that future." As Jake's thoughts swirled, the communications officer called out, "Captain, we've received a message from the Andromedans. It's urgent." Jake turned quickly. The Andromedans, one of the most respected and ancient species in the galaxy. If they were reaching out now, it could only mean one thing: the Council's stranglehold on galactic politics was weakening. The galaxy was starting to change. "Put it through," Jake ordered. The screen flickered, and a dignified Andromedan ambassador appeared. Their silvery skin shimmered, and their multiple eyes blinked in unison as they spoke. "Captain Morrison," the ambassador said, their voice soft but steady, "we have witnessed your actions, and we are not blind to the path you are carving. The Council has always held power through fear, but we, the Andromedans, stand with you now." Jake's heart skipped. "You're offering your support." The Andromedan nodded. "We are, but we are not alone. Many of us, those who have grown weary of the Council's oppression, are prepared to speak out. We too have been watching, Captain, and we have seen that unity is stronger than dominance." Jake stood straighter, the weight of their words sinking in. "This is just the beginning, isn't it?" The ambassador's eyes gleamed with quiet resolve. "Yes, Captain, you have sparked something that can't be extinguished. The war may not be over, but the Council's grip on the galaxy is slipping. We will join you. Together, we will push back against the tyranny of the Council and build a new future for all species." Jake's breath caught in his throat. They were not alone. The Andromedans, ancient, powerful, and once neutral, had chosen a side. The galaxy was changing, and humanity was leading the charge. Back on Earth, President Patricia Hayes watched the news feeds, her face set in determination. The war was far from over, but the tide had shifted. Her message to the galaxy had been simple but powerful: humanity stands with the outcasts. Humanity stands for something better. "We've done what needed to be done," she said to the assembled leaders in her office. "But now we must prepare. The Council will retaliate, but we are no longer standing alone." One of her advisors, the Treasury Secretary, looked uncertain. "We've been sanctioned, cut off from trade routes. Our colonies are struggling." Patricia's eyes were resolute. "This is the price of standing up for what's right. We may not have the resources they do, but we have something more powerful: unity. We'll rebuild. Together with our new allies, we will show the galaxy that there is another way." Back on Luna Station, Jake stood with his officers, staring out at the stars. The fleet had endured the worst of the Council's attack, but they were far from finished. The Refugee Alliance had become something greater than anyone had anticipated, a symbol of hope, resilience, and defiance. But there were still battles to be fought. There would be casualties. The Council wouldn't go down without a fight. Yet, as Jake looked around at the diverse crew, humans, Vidians, Kelhari, Zephyrites, Andromedans, He knew this was something the galaxy had never seen before. A coalition built not on fear, but on cooperation. The future was uncertain, and the war was far from over. But the galaxy had seen the spark of change, and now there was no turning back. For the first time in history, the galaxy had seen that unity between species could overcome oppression. Jake turned to Lisa, his voice filled with quiet confidence. "We're not just fighting for Earth anymore. We're fighting for the galaxy, for the future of all species. And I won't stop until we've shown everyone what humanity is capable of." Lisa nodded, her expression serious but hopeful. "Neither will I, Captain, neither will I." As the Defiance prepared to launch once more, the stars outside seemed to shine a little brighter. The journey ahead would be long, filled with challenges and sacrifices. But humanity, alongside the Refugee Alliance, had ignited a fire in the galaxy, a fire that would burn through the darkness and light the way to a new future. The Galactic Council's forces were scattered and their power waning, but the fight was far from over. Jake Morrison and the Refugee Alliance had proven that unity could break through the darkest of times, that standing together, no matter how different, could overcome even the greatest of powers. Humanity, once a small player in a galaxy of giants, had become the spark that ignited a revolution. The galaxy would never be the same, and this was just the beginning. The galaxy may try to divide us, but together, we will build something greater than we ever imagined.